The words came from behind the marble bar counter like a desperate cry for help. "I need a boyfriend tomorrow." The waitress's voice trembled as she pressed a phone against her ear, fighting back tears while pretending to polish a glass. She had no idea that the man standing only a few feet away had heard every word. And she certainly didn't know that he was the billionaire whose name could open almost any door in the city. But what happened the next morning would change both of their lives forever. Before we begin, if you believe kindness can give someone a second chance when the world has already given up on them, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes one small act of kindness can become the beginning of an entirely new life. Her name was Emily Carter, and at 27, she had learned how quickly life could turn against you. She worked double shifts at an expensive downtown restaurant, saving every dollar she could to keep her younger brother in college. Their mother had died 3 years earlier, leaving Emily with a mountain of bills and a promise she refused to break. Her brother, Noah, was brilliant but had nearly dropped out because he couldn't afford tuition. Emily had quietly taken on the responsibility, telling him never to worry about the sacrifices she was making. That evening, however, Emily had received a phone call that made her knees weak. Her landlord had given her until the next morning to pay several months of overdue rent or leave the tiny apartment she shared with Noah. Worse, Noah's college had scheduled a scholarship review meeting for the following afternoon. Emily knew what that meant. If the school discovered their financial situation had become unstable, Noah could lose the scholarship he desperately needed. But there was another problem. The landlord had made an insulting proposal. He knew a wealthy businessman who was hosting an important family gathering the next day. The man's family expected him to bring a serious girlfriend, and they were offering Emily enough money to solve her immediate problems if she pretended to be his girlfriend for one evening. Emily had rejected the idea immediately. She wasn't desperate enough to sell her dignity. Then the landlord had laughed and reminded her that dignity didn't pay rent. That was why Emily was crying behind the counter, telling her best friend on the phone that she needed to find a boyfriend before tomorrow. Not because she wanted romance, but because she had been pushed into a corner where every choice seemed humiliating. Across the room stood Daniel Hayes, the owner of the restaurant chain. At 38, Daniel was one of the youngest billionaires in the city. Newspapers called him ruthless. Business magazines described him as emotionally distant. People assumed he had everything because he owned luxury hotels, restaurants, and properties across 3 states. But very few people knew that Daniel had grown up in a small apartment with a single mother who worked 3 jobs. His mother had died before he became successful, and the last thing she had ever told him was that money meant nothing if he used it only to protect himself. Daniel had never forgotten those words. When he heard Emily crying, he didn't immediately approach her. Instead, he watched as she wiped her face, straightened her apron, and returned to work as if nothing had happened. She served an elderly couple with a genuine smile. She helped a little boy pick a dessert. She apologized when another waitress accidentally bumped into her. Daniel noticed something that money had never been able to buy him. Strength. Near closing time, Emily dropped a tray. The crash echoed through the restaurant. She froze, expecting her supervisor to yell. Instead, Daniel quietly walked over and helped her gather the broken pieces. She looked up and realized who he was. She immediately apologized. Daniel simply told her not to worry about the glass. Then he asked why she had said she needed a boyfriend by tomorrow. Emily's face turned pale. She tried to deny it, but her eyes betrayed her. Finally, exhausted from pretending she was fine, she told him everything. She expected judgment. Instead, Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he made an unexpected offer. He would accompany her to the family gathering. Emily thought he was joking. He wasn't. Daniel explained that his own family had been pressuring him for years to settle down. He had ignored them because he had never met anyone he trusted enough to bring home. If pretending to be her boyfriend for one evening could help her protect her brother's future, he was willing to do it. But Emily refused at first. She didn't want charity. Daniel looked at her and said that he wasn't giving her charity. He was asking for her help too. His family had been trying to control every decision in his life, and perhaps pretending to have a relationship would finally give him the freedom to make them stop. After several minutes, Emily reluctantly agreed. The next evening, she arrived at Daniel's family estate wearing a simple blue dress she had bought years earlier. She expected the family to look down on her. They did. Within minutes, Daniel's aunt asked what Emily's parents did. Another relative made a subtle comment about waitresses marrying above their station. Emily smiled politely, but inside, every word cut deeper. Then Daniel took her hand. He introduced her proudly, not as an employee, not as someone doing him a favor, but as the woman he had chosen to bring there. The room fell silent. For the first time in years, Daniel stood against his family instead of allowing them to dictate his life. But the biggest shock came later that evening. Daniel discovered that Emily had never told anyone about the landlord's offer because she was ashamed. He quietly asked his lawyer to investigate the situation. The investigation revealed that the landlord had been illegally increasing rents on several low-income tenants and threatening them with eviction. Daniel purchased the building. The next morning, every tenant received a letter informing them that their leases would be protected and their illegal fees cancelled. Emily couldn't believe it. She confronted Daniel, asking why he had done so much for her. He answered that he had once watched his mother cry over an unpaid bill while pretending everything was fine. He had spent his entire adult life trying to build enough wealth that nobody he cared about would ever have to feel that helpless again. But Emily had changed something inside him. She reminded him that people didn't need saving as much as they needed someone willing to stand beside them. Weeks passed. Noah kept his scholarship. Emily moved into a safer apartment, but she continued working because she wanted to stand on her own feet. Daniel kept visiting the restaurant, not because he needed anything, but because he wanted to see her. Their fake relationship slowly became something neither of them had planned. There was no grand proposal. No instant romance. Just small moments. Coffee before work. Long conversations after closing. Daniel learning to laugh again. Emily discovering that behind the billionaire's expensive suit was a lonely man who had been waiting years for someone to see him rather than his money. One rainy evening, Emily found Daniel standing outside the restaurant. He looked nervous. She smiled and asked what was wrong. Daniel told her that tomorrow was the anniversary of his mother's death. For years, he had avoided thinking about it. But this year, he wanted to visit her grave with someone who had taught him that love wasn't about rescuing someone. It was about staying. Emily reached for his hand. And this time, there was no pretending. Months later, when Daniel finally asked Emily to marry him, she didn't say yes because he was a billionaire. She said yes because when she was at her lowest, he had never once made her feel small. And Daniel didn't marry the waitress because he wanted to save her. He married the woman who had reminded him how to live. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more stories that remind us that kindness can change a life. And before you leave, comment, kindness changes everything, if you believe one good person can make a difference in someone else's darkest moment. Because sometimes, the person who steps into your life pretending to help you for one night becomes the person who stays beside you for the rest of your life.